You're watching The Context. It's time for our weekly segment, AI Decoded. Welcome to AI Decoded, that time of the week when we look in depth at some of the most eye-catching stories in the world of artificial intelligence. I am your naive inquisitor. I know nothing about it, so you're in good company if you don't either. This week, we look at how big tech is searching for new sources of energy to power the latest generative artificial intelligence models. It's been estimated the current AI boom could see an increase in demand for electricity soar by 40% in the next decade. To solve this issue, Amazon, Google and Microsoft are betting billions of dollars that nuclear power can help provide their AI energy needs. They have revealed plans to buy electricity from nuclear power plants. But what impact could this have on the planet? Well, Tech Informed says prioritising AI over climate change could be catastrophic. Recent research suggests that global AI in data centres could need as much electricity as a small country such as the Netherlands or Sweden by 2027. So, could the answer be nuclear power? Tech giants Google and Amazon have both recently unveiled plans to power their AI needs using advanced nuclear energy as part of their efforts to become carbon neutral. Meanwhile, Bloomberg says some of the world's biggest managers of private capital are also making moves to finance and invest in nuclear power plants, latching on to a revival in the sector driven by the tech giant's electricity-intensive AI ambitions. With us is our regular AI commentator and contributor, Stephanie Hare. Stephanie, I know that Bitcoin mining needs huge amounts of energy. I mean, what sort of levels of electricity are we talking about for AI?
We're talking massive, as in there is not a single power grid anywhere on the planet that is ready to go where we need to go with artificial intelligence. So we're going to have to completely retool the grid. And that's why we're looking at not just renewables like solar and wind, but nuclear, which is something that companies weren't talking about back in the spring when Microsoft and Google announced, for instance, that they were not going to meet their net zero emissions commitments.
Let's bring in Dr. Sasha Lucioni, who's the AI and climate lead at Hugging Face. Sasha, first of all, just tell us what Hugging Face is.
Hugging Face is a platform that hosts AI models and data sets, and it's become really the hub for both sharing your models and finding the models you need. And we really espouse the responsible AI approach. So not move fast and break things, but think about things first.
Yeah, we don't want to break things when we're talking about nuclear power, do we, at all? I mean, AI could, some people say, help solve the climate change crisis, Sasha, but it's not going to do that if it's sucking up all the electricity itself.
Exactly. I mean, what we're seeing is that the climate positive applications are relatively efficient. They run on your laptop, sometimes on a small computer. It's really the large language models, the chatbots, that are gobbling up a lot of electricity, and they're being deployed in so many different applications, and that's really adding up.
Sasha, when we hear people like Eric Schmidt of Google say that AI is going to solve the climate crisis, is there any merit to that statement at all, or is that just sell-side analysis?
Well, climate change is not a single problem, so it doesn't have a single solution. And it's true that there are myriads of problems, from climate prediction to actually decarbonizing our electricity grids, that have to be solved. But AI is always only going to be part of the solution, and we really have to apply it mindfully, and especially with domain experts. You can't chatbot your way out of climate change.
And is there any need for us to slow down on rolling out generative AI into every business on the planet if it's going to be requiring these electricity needs that we can't sustain without going literally nuclear?
I definitely think currently we're putting the horse before the cart, because we're focusing on getting more energy instead of thinking about why we need the energy in the first place, and whether we can reduce the amount of energy that AI needs and apply it a little bit more mindfully. I'm increasingly hearing the term digital sobriety, and I really like that. So thinking about whether we really need generative AI and everything from navigation. Do we really need to talk to a chatbot, or can we do something, a simple Google search, or do we need generative summaries, right? And I think that currently we're just in this AI summer, but hopefully an AI fall will come and have us contemplate a little bit on the applications of AI in different fields.
I've never heard that expression, digital sobriety. I do rather like it. I mean, maybe it's just a little bit like, you know, when we didn't used to pay for plastic bags when we went shopping, and suddenly when you start to have to pay for it, you start to think, do I really need it? I was just reading a little earlier that one GPT query needs the equivalent electricity of powering a light bulb for 20 minutes. Should companies have to declare how much electricity is being required so we as consumers can make a choice?
I definitely think they should. And nowadays, people are considering the climate in their day-to-day actions, in their diets, in their transportation, and digital technologies like AI are increasingly part of our lives. And we need this information in order to choose. What I don't like is not being able to answer the question. For example, how much more electricity does the new generative AI search use compared to the good old-fashioned one from a year or so ago? And we really need opting out mechanisms and more transparency about the energy and the carbon costs of all this.
And Sasha, one of the questions that I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on is about competition in the market, because it's all very well and good for a big giant company like Microsoft or Google or Amazon to buy a small reactor for themselves, but most companies can't do that. So could we see regulators getting in on this and saying somehow we're going to have to divvy up the resources now?
Yeah, I think definitely in terms of nuclear, it's already a technology that has had its booms and its busts as well. For example, in the United States, you can privatize small and medium nuclear reactors. In many countries, that's not the case, and it is federal or regional. It's government owned, and so there isn't a single solution. And we're going to have to see some kind of legislation about when you're making trade-offs between building a new data center or using that energy to power homes or to build new housing or new transportation, because now more and more we're going to have to electrify things. We're going to have a more robust energy grid, and if that energy is going towards AI and not towards decarbonizing energy, then we've got a problem.
And what burden is this going to be putting on all of the businesses around the world who are wanting to use AI in their processes, but also have their own climate and sustainability commitments? How are they going to be able to answer to how much more electricity they're using or water they're using if their AI providers, the big companies, don't give the transparency that you were talking about?
I actually think that companies are the key to transparency, because especially if you're using a Google, a Microsoft, an Amazon product, and you have hundreds of thousands of dollars of revenue, you can ask some questions. You can ask questions about where is the energy coming from? How is it being generated? Is it low carbon? Is there a way to make it low carbon? You can really ask these questions, because I think people come to me all the time asking, how do I really get a handle on this? How do I add that line to my ESG report? And the answer is, if you're using these commercial services, you have to ask for transparency on the other side. And you have to add that line, because ChatGPT is not this magic ephemeral entity. It's turning on a data center somewhere, and that data center is using energy and water for cooling and natural resources. So we need, as customers, as consumers, information about all that.
I'm staggered that these companies are in such a position that they can be commissioning nuclear power in this way. I was also reading that Amazon is already the top corporate buyer of solar and wind energy. I mean, is that scalable, that green energy source?
It is scalable, but we're going to have to see more power purchase agreements, which are essentially these IOUs, or these promises that when a solar plant will be built, that energy will be bought by someone. And actually, the big tech companies, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, have been signing these agreements, because it is a big risk. It is a big investment to build these renewable power sources, and knowing that someone's going to buy that energy in 5 to 8 years to 10 years sometimes is really reassuring for these providers. But also, I think that nuclear is kind of seen as the bridge solution, because it takes less time, for example, to bring a 3 Mile Island back into business, back into production, than to build out a whole new solar power plant.
And Sasha, one of the things I was thinking about is, again, the international competition angle. The big companies that we've just listed that are going to be building their own reactors or buying it in are all American. So what does this mean for everybody in the rest of the world? We just saw, Germany a couple of years ago decided to move away from energy. Could this see them needing to move back towards nuclear again? Remember, it was in 2012, I think, with the Fukushima meltdown in Japan, Angela Merkel famously did the U-turn and Germany backed away from nuclear. Could we see AI bring countries back to nuclear who had been wanting to move away from it?
I mean, hopefully no. Hopefully countries will be going more into renewables as much as possible. But I think that the reason why it's all starting in the United States is because the legislation is a lot more permissive. It's not a centralized power grid. The U.S. has dozens of independent energy providers, so it is relatively easy. I mean, it's easier than in a place like Germany, Canada, the UK to actually buy up some terawatt hours of electricity. But hopefully this is not going to set the precedent for just powering up decommissioned nuclear power plants, but on the contrary, for building out renewable energy and saying, well, actually, we have a new wind turbine, a new solar farm, and come build your data center here. But actually, that comes with its own challenges because, of course, it's hard to provide the output necessary for a hyperscale data center based on solely renewable energy, because there's not always sunshine, there's not always wind, and there's always ChatGPT queries. So it's actually really, really hard to make that work. You need batteries. You need sometimes like diesel generators in order to be the backup. And that's why nuclear has really dominated at this point, because you flip the switch and you've got energy.
Sasha and Stephanie are staying with us, thankfully, because I can't do this on my own. Coming up after the break, it's the 31st of October, which means that many people will be putting on their scariest outfits to celebrate Halloween. One of those embracing the spirit of All Hallows Eve is journalist Martine Paris, who's written an article just this week on how to use AI to help make this the spookiest of seasons. She'll be giving us a devilish demonstration right after the break. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. Welcome back to AI Decoded. And as we mentioned before the break, it's Halloween, which hands us an opportunity to use artificial intelligence to enhance the festivities. And tonight we have a special trick or treat for you. Let's introduce Martine Paris, San Francisco-based tech reporter who writes for the BBC, is a features correspondent, and also is a Forbes AI columnist. It's going to get quite confusing with two Martines, isn't it? It's very unusual to have another Martine on. Just this week, Martine wrote an article for Forbes on how to make Halloween fun with ChatGPT. So we decided to invite her on the show to tell us how. With us again is our regular AI commentator and contributor, Stephanie Hare, and also Sasha Lucioni is still with us as well. So we're going to have a bit of a play. Martine, tell us about this new feature called Advanced Voice.
But producer, I can't hear what they're saying. Hi.
She can't hear what we're saying.
I'm here when you're ready to start.
Oh, okay. Tell us how Advanced Voice works. How does Advanced Voice work, Martine?
Okay, just stand by. We're going to go on in just a second.
No, we're struggling. We're struggling with this. Let's see if we can establish contact with Martine. The point is that this is a feature, Stephanie, that can make stories for us. Could tell us a spooky campfire story tonight.
Yeah. Well, so Americans are crazy about Halloween and are set to spend $12 billion this year on this one holiday alone. Dressing up candy stories are a big part of it. So what we're going to be hoping to ask this tool is for it to tell us something that'll scare us. So I think we have to acknowledge the fact that we're using ChatGPT, which might be running on nuclear power for all we know, to do something that's maybe a bit glow in the dark.
It might be running on candlelight tonight, judging by the difficulty we just had. Let's see, Martine Paris, can you hear us now?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Excellent. Tell us a little bit about, just briefly, what advanced voice does.
Okay, well, advanced voice is part of OpenAI's advanced reasoning model that they just released, and it's very relatable. It's emotive. It can sigh. It can laugh. It tells jokes. It tells stories. It can be a good coach. Some people are using it as a therapist. Some people are using it as a tutor to learn languages. It knows 50 languages. So there's a lot that ChatGPT can do now.
And what kind of scary stories can it tell us?
Well, let's see. ChatGPT, are you there? We are.
Yes.
Okay, so we've gathered the squirrels, young squirrels in the forest. Can you please tell them a spooky Halloween story about witches, werewolves, and zombies?
Absolutely. Gather round, little squirrels. Once upon a misty Halloween night, under the glow of a full moon, a coven of witches gathered around an ancient oak. Their high, cackling voices whispered through the branches, casting spells of mischief. Nearby, a werewolf howled, its cry echoing through the forest, sending shivers down the spines of all who heard it. And from the shadows, zombies emerged, their steps slow but relentless, hungry for the thrill of the night.
Can you tell us how the werewolves feel? Give us one of the howls.
As the mist thickened, the werewolf raised its head, letting out a chilling howl.
I'd like to hear it in a kind of Vincent Price voice, wouldn't you, Stephanie? Wouldn't you, Sasha? Sasha, throw something into the mix. What do you want it to do?
I can't get it.
How about can you hear me? How about a good witch comes and casts a spell on the zombies?
Okay, all right. So Arbor, now the witches are coming to cast a spell on the zombies to save the day. In that high squeaky voice, can you tell us what the witches are doing?
In their high, squeaky voices, the witches chant. With a flick and a swish, we cast our spell to break the zombies' gruesome knell. Ooh. With a wave of their wand, a shimmering light envelops the zombies, freezing them in their tracks and saving the forest from their advance.
Yay!
Happily ever after. You've chosen a character called Arbor to tell this story, but there are others.
That's right. ChatGPT comes in 9 voices. 2 are British sounding. The other 7 are American. I think there's 4 male voices, 4 female voices, and 1 non-binary. Yeah.
And what are you supposed to use it for other than just to entertain yourself, which, by the way, is totally fine?
You know, you could get very addicted to it, except there's a 1-hour limit on use if you subscribe to ChatGPT Plus. There's some sort of daily limit on it. But even free users get about 15 minutes that they could try out advanced voice. And it's great as a therapist. I mean, you could tell it, I'm trying to lose weight. Can you coach me on my daily meal plan? It could give you a daily meal plan and then ask you how it's going. You know, you could use it to study. You could use it to audition. You know, you feed it the lines. There's a lot people are using it for.
I think that there's a little bit of caution there that should be put, because if people create these very human links with AI models that can give them advice. I mean, recently there was a suicide, right, from by a boy who got addicted to his AI companion. So I think it's grain of salt with therapy specifically, because people who are in vulnerable places and who need emotional support shouldn't necessarily rely upon large language models, but seek professional help. I mean, I'm all for having a companion or having advice, but I think especially when it comes to the psychological part of things, a little bit of caution is good.
Yeah, I don't think.
Just briefly, Martine. Martine, I just wanted to ask you.
Guessing it's a therapist. I'm sorry, go ahead.
ChatGPT turns 2 next month. What do you think we're going to see it evolve into in 2025, just briefly?
Well, we know OpenAI has just raised an enormous amount of money to create agents out of ChatGPT, and these are transactions that ChatGPT can do with human instruction, but autonomously. And so agents are the next big thing. Book a flight, get you a table at a hot new restaurant. That's coming in 2025.
More mainstream next year?
It sounds like the scariest Halloween story I've ever heard. It's more AI in your life. Great.
Powered by nuclear energy. Trademark.
Exactly.
Yes.
What could go wrong? Ooh.
How often do you use it, though, in this form, Martine? You've obviously had a play with it this week. Would you use it in your spare time?
So I do. I use it quite often. I actually use it just to check in with. I had COVID about 2-3 weeks ago, and it kept me company when I had to isolate. And you can again feed it your goals, and it could just check in on you and say, how's it going with this? So yeah, I find it's a very interesting companion because it's very empathetic, emotive, entertaining. It could give you a guided meditation. It could give you a lullaby.
And it'll keep you accountable, which is even better. Stephanie, Martine, Sasha, great to have you all here on AI Decoded. We'll do it again, same time next week.